Hills with us now. Scott Bolden, former chair of the D.C. Democratic Party. Niall Stanage, White House columnist with our partners at The Hill. Scott, come on.
I knew you were going to start with me. I knew it. Let's go. Let's go. Let's get it on. What's wrong with what she said? She could have called them deplorables because she's no longer a presidential candidate. But listen, they're taking orders from someone who directed January 6th, who believed in the big lie, who's facing 91 criminal felony charges, federal and state, and he's leading the GOP presidential nomination process at 55 or 60% of the GOP vote.
All of which, now, since you brought up the polling, okay, yeah. Marquette poll, Biden versus Trump on the issues. Who's better? Inflation, Trump by 23 points. Creating jobs, Trump by 19 points. Immigration, Trump by 34 points. I'm doing this math in my head. You guys should be impressed. Foreign policy, Trump by 5 points. Niall, is that sort of why we're hearing the attacks on Donald Trump personally versus on policy?
Well, I think the fact of the matter is President Biden is lucky that his opponent is likely to be former President Trump, because you see those massive differentials on the issues. But that very same poll, Leland, when asked in a head-to-head matchup, actually has President Biden leading among likely voters by about 2 or 3 points. So it's like an inverse of what used to happen with former President Obama. Obama was more popular personally than his policies. Trump is more disliked than his policies are, which is obviously good for Biden.
Well, and that's the flip side, right, of Joe Biden, right? He's less liked than his policies.
Well, I wouldn't say he's less liked. I would say that he just doesn't present well. He's older, ageism, and the voters, Democrats and Republicans, are charging him with that. But the bottom line is this. In any election, all you need is one more vote than the next guy. And the poll that you just mentioned, that poll matters most. He's leading Trump. It's not clear Trump's even going to be on the ballot, and the Dems ought to worry about that.
You think that it's interesting you say that. You both guys sort of agree in terms of that it's good for Democrats to have Donald Trump on the ballot. It certainly is what motivated a lot of Democratic voters in 2022, even though he wasn't on the ballot. But President Biden now has sort of started to take this, I don't know, almost sort of a little personally. We're going to play back-to-back. President Biden today talking about poll numbers and some economic numbers next to Jimmy Carter back in the late 1970s, early 1980s, talking about essentially the same thing. Take a listen.
You all are not the happiest people in the world. What you report. And I mean it sincerely. It gets you get more legs when you're reporting something that's negative. You turn on the television, and there's not a whole lot about boy saves dog as he swims in the lake, to say, it's about, somebody pushed the dog in the lake.
Confidence. It is a crisis that strikes at the very heart and soul and spirit of our national will. We can see this crisis in the growing doubt about the meaning of our own lives and in the loss of a unity of purpose for our nation.
Niall, history rhymes. It doesn't repeat itself.
This is true. You're quoting Seamus Heaney, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, he's a guy from Ireland. I had to get in some poetry there. No, I guess my question, I think actually it may have been Mark Twain, but we digress. My point being this, is the White House starting to worry about just sort of where the American people are?
Yeah. Here's where I think the comparison with Carter does come in to the detriment of President Biden. As I understand it, around the time Jimmy Carter gave that speech, the American people had basically stopped listening to him. They had decided that they didn't like his performance in office and it wasn't going to go well. Now, at the moment, the Democrats, or President Biden's campaign, I should say, has this huge campaign to try to boost his economic numbers. Those numbers aren't moving yet, and I think the fear in Democratic circles is, what if people have stopped listening? That's a problem.
I'm going to give you your talking point, and you're going to agree. You're going to tell me that it doesn't matter whether they listen if he's running against Donald Trump, and that's how he beat Donald Trump in 2020.
No, I'm not going to tell you that. Let me tell you what I'm going to tell you. Okay, you get 20 seconds. I'm going to tell you that he's got a legislative record, and Bidenomics, the numbers make all the sense. He's got something to run on. It's not even the messaging, in my opinion. It is how he presents, and whether the Dems and Republicans, when they see him, he is not inspiring, and he's not selling that message, and he's the chief seller. That's a problem, and they've got to change that and fix that, because if Trump's on the ballot, then Biden's going to win because he's kind of baked in.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.